You go through weight loss surgery and you lose a ton of weight and you look beautiful. The only problem is you're left with a lot of excess skin. Today's YouTuber experiencing Nirvana is going to share her experience with the extra skin left over from weight loss surgery. I hope you enjoy.
I was talking to one of my best friends, and I have been really ashamed of myself. My body is huge. I am very uncomfortable where I am. Whatever your body looks like, I am not telling you that you look worse or better than I do. I am uncomfortable in the body that I'm currently walking in.
So that's really tough for me to hear Nirvana say. But I want to hear what you have to say on this. Do you guys currently feel like it's tough for you to exist in your body, that you're uncomfortable with the way you look or you feel? And if you do feel good about yourself, was there ever a time when maybe you felt uncomfortable or not so good about yourself?
The meat suit that I happen to be occupying is uncomfortable for me. It hurts. It makes me mad, and it makes me depressed. So please, 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 no matter how much you weigh, if you weigh 120, if you weigh 600 pounds, I am not telling you in any way, shape, or form that you are better or worse off than I am. Please do not think that I am like, oh, well, I'm just really uncomfortable in my skin because I look like this. I'm not doing that. Okay. I'm just telling you right now, I'm having enough balls to show you my body and what I've done to it to help motivate me to change it. I'm not trying to make you feel bad about yourself or make you feel, I'm just showing you what I have done. And it will help me in the long run to try to get it off. So I have got the fat back in my arms. There's no muscle here. Like, there's nothing. It's gone.
So when she shows her arm like that, because there's a lot of women that get upset when they have a little bit of excess skin there. Like even if you don't go through surgery, there's women that don't like that extra arm fat that hangs on their arms. But when I see Nirvana's arms, I could see how that really give her grief. That does look like something that would not be comfortable to have on your body.
It's gone. So it's all fat again. And the fat is starting to meet me back there. But what I'm most embarrassed of, why not show the world? What I'm most embarrassed of is my stomach. See, it doesn't look that bad here. Doesn't look that bad, right? Because I have it stuffed in pants. All my back fat came back. All the back fat.
You know, this takes a lot of bravery. She had like 15,000 fans, and I'm sure tens of thousands of people have seen her videos. But to expose yourself like this to the world, amazing bravery. Kudos.
But again, doesn't look too bad yet. Yeah, it all came back. This is just breathing. Like there's no sucking in. It's just, this is it. Yeah. See, here's where I know that I've gotten fat again is because this little thing right here is that pocket of fat that he left on me when he did my paniculectomy. And when I get fat, it fills back up again. So that's how I know that I've gotten fat again. is because this little piece right here is usually completely flat. And when I gain a lot of weight, it puts a roll here. Yeah. So, yeah, see? Roll. Yeah, now you can see it. See, roll.
So you guys know I don't do this very often, but the last couple of shows we've had people that have had interactions with their family when they were young. And some people were on the side of the family members when the family members would make comments about their kids or their nieces and nephews' weight and how it had started to gain, how they had started to gain weight. It had started to get out of control, if you will. And sometimes we tell people, don't say anything because when you say something, it just makes people run to food. But look what happens a lot of times. If you don't say anything, you end up having a situation like this where I can't help but think, how come her parents didn't stop this when she was younger? But then there's that other piece of me that says, well, I watch videos all the time where parents do try intervening and it's kind of rebelled against. So again, if you're not too mad at me for mentioning that, let's talk about that in the comments. If you have any thoughts on should parents be stopping their children before they get to this level, or should parents be minding their own business and letting kids make their own decisions? Let me know what you think.
There you go. I have always showed my body on this channel. I have always been honest and always been, yes, Bella, always been honest and showed you the real deal.
What a cute kitten. Is that a Persian? If you know what type of cat that is, let me know down in the comments. If you go through the surgery and you lose a lot of weight, that's a good thing. But if you do lose a lot of weight, you might end up needing another surgery to kind of correct the excess skin that you have. It's better that you know that now rather than finding it out later because it's just a part of the process that you might have to go through. But if you want to try to avoid the surgeries altogether, go get your shoes. Let's go for a walk. Question. It's Saturday for you. It's TGIF for me. It's Friday for me. Last week at this time, I was thinking, and maybe you guys think about this every now and then, I don't know. But a lot of us are in our 40s, 50s, maybe even a couple of us are in our 60s, right? And it's kind of amazing how, do you guys remember about 15, 20, maybe even closer to 30 years ago, how important days like Friday and Saturday were? Man, there was a time where I had like an entourage. Maybe it wasn't an entourage as much as it was just a group. I would have 3 or 4 buddies, and I've talked about my buddies before, but I would have 3 or 4 friends, and we would usually have girlfriends, right? And we would have a situation where every weekend, Friday and Saturday were just such super important days. And now I fast forward to where I'm at now, a couple of weeks from turning 48, and it's just so interesting how Friday and Saturday at this point in my life have just kind of blended into, days that are no different from Monday and Wednesday, Now don't get me wrong, just like anybody else, I still absolutely love Friday and Saturday, probably because of what they mean with regards to work, right? It's nice at the end of Friday to know that, the next day you're going to be able to sleep in and kind of enjoy your day without having to worry about working. But I used to constantly reach out to friends, good morning, and I would be like, hey, what's the plan? What are we doing this weekend? I remember back in 06 and 07, I went to, let me get over here and get a little of this shade. I went on the wrong side of the road today. I remember back in 06 and 07 and even 08, those 3 years in a row that I went and played the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I remember all 3 years I took some sort of girl with me. I remember one year it was my wife, and then the following year I got divorced, so I took my girlfriend. And no, I did not get divorced because of a girlfriend. I did it the right way. We got divorced, and then
I met up with my girlfriend, I should say, because I knew her from the past, but we had never, dated or anything before then. But it's just interesting because I remember that we had like 8 or 9 friends in Vegas, and to be honest with you, if I contacted 8 or 9 friends today and I said, hey, I'm going to the World Series of Poker, who's with me? I have a feeling 0 would go, not because they're not my friends any longer, but simply because, it's just a different world when we're in our 40s, 50s, and 60s than it is when we're teenagers. I mean, seriously, it's interesting. If somebody called you and said, hey, Betty, let's go out dancing and let's go to the club and let's meet some boys, right? It would come across as bizarre now. And I don't know really when that happens. It's just kind of a slow phase that happens, but you just don't go to clubs and traditionally see 40, 50, or 60-year-old people. Now, if you are 40, 50, or 60 and you're still going to the clubs, I suppose good for you, But it is a little bizarre to see those aged people at the clubs. When I used to go to the clubs when I was in my early 20s, I don't recall ever seeing too many middle-aged people, although I'm sure occasionally you do spot one. But it's just kind of interesting, isn't it, how life kind of happens to you. And when you're 40, 50, and 60, all of a sudden you don't necessarily want to be shaking your body in front of 20-year-olds, It's kind of weird how that happens. Now, I suppose there's some people out there that would get bummed about something like that. But I think what happens is, as we get older, I think something happens to our brain where it tells us, you know what? It is what it is. I don't really need to go out with my buddies every weekend, right? And pretty soon, instead of going out with your buddies every single Friday and every single Saturday and getting together for football games on every single Sunday, pretty soon you're lucky if you meet up with your friends once a week, It's amazing how many people stop to take a double look at the guy with the camera, It's not like I have a news camera, it's just a little GoPro, I think I'm gonna go this way just to get a tiny bit of shade. It's one of those days where the sun's really out there, really high in the sky, and it seems like there's no shade. Kind of blows me away how day to day you catch the shade in different areas. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but in Long Beach, California, 2 women named Mean Edie and Jax Diener opened up a woman's sports bar. And apparently when it opened up, there were women hanging around, or a line of women wrapped around the corner of the streets. So I thought that was really, really cool. And let's hope that women actually attend that sports bar each and every week. And let's hope it becomes more and more popular. Now, what's interesting, obviously, when you open up a women's sports bar, you still have to allow men to go in there. What'll be interesting is in 2 or 3 years, will it be actually majority men, or will it stay majority women? Because I don't know about you, but when I go to a place to eat or to hang out or whatever, I don't necessarily think to myself, is this a woman's establishment? Is this a men's establishment? So I don't know if people are even going to know that this is a woman's establishment in the years to come, unless they go out of their way to make it look, pro-woman or pro this or pro that, But apparently it's one of only 5 women's sports bars in the whole world. And the name of this place is called Watch Me Sports Bar. So I thought that was kind of interesting. There's not much of a story to be said other than the fact that it's women owned and operated, and it's specifically for women. So here's my question to you. Would you be up for meeting up with your fellow girlfriends and going out for a beer and watching a game at a women's sports bar? Or would you prefer going to the sports bars that are kind of set up the way they are now, where everybody's welcome? And not to say that a women's sports bar is like, not allowing people to come, because I'm sure they are. But at the same time, let's say you're a guy, and I can have men and women answer this. Let's say you're a guy and you attend a sports bar like this. Do you think you would go in there and be totally welcome, or do you think you'd get some eyeballs on you like, what are you doing in our sports bar? This is our sports bar, asshole. Jesus, lady, I just wanted a beer and a burger. Get out. You know, that's the funny thing when we kind of put titles on these establishments. There used to be what was considered, and I think it's still there, a gay Denny's here in Phoenix. I forget the exact location, but I've eaten there a couple of times. When I ate there, I was there with my wife and stuff, so I never really thought of it as gay Denny's, and we were always accepted there. But it's just kind of weird that you have these establishments that are considered pro this or pro that. I'm the type that whenever I'm out anywhere, I like to enjoy the ambiance. So if I went into this sports bar and all of a sudden they had pictures on the walls, not of Michael Jordan and, you know, Nolan Ryan and these different sports legends, but instead maybe they had pictures of female sports legends, I don't know, I think that's a novel idea. I think that might actually be super popular. One of the things that I think of when I think of sports is I think that one of the problems we have is that a lot of times women's sports tries to compete with men's sports. And I think that's kind of challenging to do when you're on the same playing field. And what I mean by that is when I watch women's softball, I love that I'm watching women's softball. I don't need to watch them playing baseball like they did in a league of their own, right? I really like the softball game. I think it's really unique. I think it's very competitive. And I think it's kind of sad that we can only watch it at the college level, because there are some teams out there like the Oklahoma Sooners and the UCLA Bruins that are just consistently very, very good at softball. They keep it, they stay in their lane, and I enjoy going over and watching softball probably even more than baseball, to believe it or not. But that's only because we didn't grow up with a baseball team here in Arizona. And so when I look at like women's basketball, which is obviously the closest thing to the king of women's sports, right? Because like I said, we don't really have a professional women's baseball league. We don't have a professional women's football league. And women's soccer, although we're very, very good, I don't really see too many women's soccer games on TV, although I know they're out there. But basketball is one of these games where there's so many ways that they could make it a little bit, not easier, I hate to use that word, but they can make it where scoring would be more prevalent so that the game could be more popular. Let me explain. I think what they ought to contemplate doing is lowering the rim from 10 feet to 9 feet. Why? Because then all of a sudden you open up a situation where instead of the occasional anomaly, which I consider a 7-foot-tall woman to be, that can dunk, right, like Brittany Griner, you get these 7-foot-tall players that can dunk, but they have to dunk in like an alley-oop or a perfect scenario type situation. If we were to lower that rim even down 6 inches, so instead of a 10-foot men's rim, they were working on a 9.5-foot rim or even a 9-foot rim, all of a sudden you have a situation where probably 80-90% of the league could dunk. That's a huge thing. Well, we don't want your 9-foot rim because we're women and we're proud. Okay, I understand that. Now we're talking though. How about this? How about we take that rim that's 10 foot, and since you don't want to adjust it down, how about we go ahead and make that rim, how about we make the circumference a tiny bit wider so that when you shoot those shots from 3-point range, maybe you make a slightly higher percentage. Maybe instead of games where you end and the score is 65 to 62, maybe you start to get a little bit of a score that's a little bit closer to the men's game, you know, where it's 105 to 115 or something. And Mala, I'll ask you, because you're a Boston Celtics fan, are you the type that can turn around on the following day after watching a great Celtics game, right, And you know what a great basketball game's like, where you make a comeback or where you beat the Lakers or some rival. Would you be able to go the very next day from a high intensity men's game and then watch a female game where maybe they only score 60 or 70 points and they're missing a lot of shots, you know? I don't think that would necessarily be at the same level of excitement. Otherwise, you would see a situation where women's sports would be sold out more. But whenever they show a women's basketball game, it's kind of like the stage or the crowd is almost always half empty. And that's not a good thing. And I'm sure you guys have heard that every year the WNBA kind of like breaks even or loses money. And then at the same time, you have these women stars saying, hey, we're just as good as the men's side. We deserve to get paid even more. If your game is missing dunks and your game is missing certain plays that the men's game has, then I think we ought to look to making an adjustment. Would it change things? Would there be players that would be good enough to be pros with a 9-foot rim? And would there be players that are successful because of their height with a 10-foot rim? Would they no longer be as successful if the rim came down? Yes, it would have a major shakeup on women's sports. But right now, let's be honest, even though women's basketball has been around for what, the last 20, 25 years, it's still considered in its infancy. It's still in that moment of time where we can change things, you know? So again, my thinking is this: why don't we try our best to make sports that are already out there for women, why don't we try our best to make them a little bit more entertaining? That way we don't have to try to come up with these sports bars for women to cheer for other women. Because the key to sports is you got to have a handful of male watchers. You got to have male viewers, because it's just proven that men like sports a little bit more than women do. And when I'm saying that, I'm talking not only playing sports, but watching sports and appreciating sports. And I think if more men watched the Women's College World Series and saw how talented some of these Oklahoma Sooner teams were and how talented some of these UCLA Bruin teams were, I think it would blow their mind how much they enjoy it. I love watching women's volleyball in the Olympics. Why? It's not because you have pretty women hitting the ball back and forth. Anybody can see that at any time, anywhere in the world on TV. We can always see pretty women. So it has nothing to do with that. The reason I like volleyball at the Olympic level is because you're seeing really talented athletes, and the game is so really fun to watch. To this day, I wonder why volleyball is not on TV more often. And when we do see it, it's always beach volleyball, which, again, super entertaining game. If you guys had a chance to watch any volleyball when the Olympics was on, let me know down in the comments. I'm telling you, we could uplift these games. This is what I would do if I was a rich a-hole. I would literally go out and start recruiting college players that did not make it to the WNBA. And I would offer them X amount of money, right? Probably not the most in the world, but I would offer them X amount of dollars to come back to their childhood dream in a new league that would actually compete against the WNBA. And unlike these football leagues like the XFL and the USFL, that again, they're just like women's sports. You look up in the crowd and it's completely empty. I'm sure you guys have noticed that. Instead of making these leagues that are competing with the NFL and the major leagues, right? You make this league where it's competing against the WNBA. You have women in this league that are playing on a 9.5 or just a 9-foot rim. You extend that rim out so it's a little bit wider than normal. And all of a sudden, unlike the WNBA, where it looks like a weaker version of the men's game, all of a sudden you have a competitive ass game where women are scoring 110 points each and every night, multiple dunks, multiple three-point shots that are made. You know, we have this player that I don't know if you guys have heard of. Her name's Caitlin Clark. The reason she is so popular is not because she's a 6-foot-tall woman that's dunking on people. It's because she's a 6-foot-tall woman that has a game that's a lot like Steph Curry's. She pulls up and shoots 3-pointers from darn near half court, and she actually makes them. Now, if every player shot with her level of skill and was capable of draining 3-pointers from half court, you wouldn't even have to have these discussions. And if you went to a 9-foot rim, it would actually ruin a player like Caitlin Clark. But it would actually create so many more really good professional players 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And it's just interesting because we've had WNBA for the past 25 or 30 years, and I still don't really know anybody that watches it. And even though my grandmother loved sports, she could not get herself to watch female basketball. So what's that tell you? Women are willing to support things that they enjoy, but I don't even think women enjoy women's sports. And that's kind of a shame. So what would you do, Jesse? Well, Bob, what I would do is just what I said. I think we need to get some entrepreneurs to actually make a women's basketball game that can compete against the WNBA. And I think what would happen is, imagine you have a choice. There's 2 women's games. There's one where women are dunking and shooting threes and making a higher percentage. And then there's the WNBA where people are clanking things all over. You know, even the free throws. If you have a rim that's bigger, all of a sudden you're going to make it where a lot more people are shooting 90% free throws. And that's what you want. And then that 3-point percentage, instead of having women shoot 24, 25% from 3 or whatever they shoot, they would probably instantly start shooting 36, 37%. They would be on par with the men. Jesse, I don't like this conversation. It's sexist. No. What I'm saying is right now the games are not competitive enough to choose them over an NBA game. But if I'm watching a team, let's say my team, the Phoenix Suns, let's say it's a weak year and they absolutely suck. And then on the other channel, it's the Mercury, and let's say they're dunking and having just this great entertaining game, I would have no problem choosing the Mercury over the Suns. But you have to give me a reason. You're saying that I don't want to watch it because it's females. That's not true. And how do we know this? Some of the most popular fights in MMA, I'm sure you've heard over the years, have been female fighters. Ronda Rousey. I wish I knew a lot of the fighters on the female side. I watch them. I just don't necessarily know their names. But I don't necessarily know all the guys' names either. You know, I know John Jones, and I know Mighty Mouse, and I know Nate Diaz, and those type of fighters from a couple years back when I was really watching it. But I've even lost interest in the men's game. Why? Because as we get older, we realize, hey, I'm not going to make a comeback and play sports someday. Instead, I'm going to take my spot up in the seats in the bleachers, and I'm going to be a fan. And so normally I watch the Suns if they make the playoffs now, whereas when I was younger, me and my grandma would be glued to the set every day. And a couple years back, the Suns made it to the championship game, and believe you me, I watched a lot of those games. But the Suns are kind of cursed. They're the only team I know that can get up 2-0 in the finals against the Milwaukee Bucks, be up by 20 points in Game 3, and still find a way to get backswept and lose, 4-2. We are cursed when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. So I get used to seeing them lose. The Mercury, on the other hand, I think they've won 2 or 3 WNBA championships, and absolutely nobody gives a crap. Is that because I'm sexist? No. It's just because who wants to watch a game where it's people missing the shot, people never dunk the ball, and I'm not even a big fan of dunking. In the men's game, you can actually say there's too many dunks. But in the women's game where there's 1 dunk a week or 1 dunk a month and it makes the news because it's so rare, I think they're really tying their arms behind their back and trying to fight against the men's game. So again, if you want to attend an all-women's sports bar, I think it's great, but I think it would be no different than if I wanted to attend an all-women's sports bar. It's still just a sports bar. What we need to do is we need to have some entrepreneurial spirit, because I can tell you one thing, whether it's a man or a woman entrepreneur, if you create a women's league where you lower that rim, expand the size of that rim or the circumference, you're going to have an entertaining game that is going to be so much more popular than the WNBA, that to this day, I don't know why there hasn't been an entrepreneurial spirit that has come up and done this. Tell me if you totally disagree with me. Tell me if you do agree with me. But either way, keep walking and have a wonderful weekend. Bye.